You talk about long term. I think here in this country, China, they have their 5-year plans. Here, it seems like 5-minute plans.
Yeah.
I mean, social medias. And then you see this administration comes in, they're very, we're going to do something about climate. This administration comes in and says, I don't really think this is a thing. And it's kind of this whipsaw kind of a thing. That's tough to think long term and actually have a long term impact when it's kind of this windshield wiper. How frustrating is that for you?
I mean, honestly, that is probably the most frustrating thing really with the West, is that to some extent, nature, and particularly climate change, not so much nature, but climate change, is become sort of politicized. It's a political issue. So you're either for it or against it. And it's the wrong framing of it, right? What you really want is that you want it to be an issue like education, right? So in this country, you have two political parties for the most part, and both think education is important. They just have different ideas about how to implement that. That's a good place to be. You want that kind of rigorous debate. But neither side is saying education is not important. And that's where we need to get climate into, that same sort of area where both parties, whether it's in this country or in the UK or in Europe, basically thinking like we have different solutions to it, but we both think it's important. In the global South, I think it does transcend political party. And I do think that it becomes more about what we do about it. Look at Colombia. We've had multiple governments, elected governments switch in Colombia. We've been able to work with all of them. And, they have different approaches to the environment, but they all think it's extraordinarily important. I think that's the thing that we need to be able to sort of lean on. There's a huge move right now on financing for nature. So we understand now that investing in nature, in restoration, in mangroves, in forestry, in fisheries, etc., can actually give you a return. And the minute that starts sinking in, now you're going to get investment dollars joining, government funding, right? I mean, look, for the longest time, the only way to fund conservation is either philanthropy, and there's only so much of that, or government spending. And in every place, government spending, guess what? It's getting harder. Private sector now is taking a bigger role. And I think that's exciting because that is the first time we see a mechanism to really scale conservation. The second thing I'm excited about is these voices from the global South. It's really remarkable now to see, the reason my parents sort of discouraged me from becoming a conservationist going into this field is because they didn't think that a kid from the global South could have a voice. When you see David Attenborough as sort of a spokesperson, when you see this being UK-led or US-led, you really imagine that we don't have a role to play. Now you're seeing leaders emerge in the global South with strong voices and agency to really act. And bringing both of those together is super exciting.